Well, good day everybody. Welcome back to the High Desert Garden. Today I will be talking about water conservation. Now, many places, many states, many countries are suffering from droughts. All right, they're suffering from a lack of water. And many of you know I'm located in Oregon, and many people think of this as a green state and not really having any problems with fresh water. But I'm actually in the high desert, and we rely on snowpack to provide us with fresh water throughout the year. And this year we've got a bit of a problem. We've had problems in years past, but this year it's especially bad because we don't have any snowpack. So we're going to be struggling to conserve water throughout the year. And water's going to be very expensive, and the city will be fining people if they do not conserve water. Luckily, I began researching water conservation over a year ago, and I've been researching Ollas. Now, I'm particularly fond of Ollas because of several reasons. I have 8 reasons in particular that I've thought of, and I'm going to share those with you guys. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on Ollas, or an expert gardener for that matter, but I do a lot of research, and I've already tested some Ollas in my own garden, so I think this video is going to end up being pretty helpful for you, so stick around. Alright, last year I installed 3 Ollas in a raised bed of mine, and I posted a video that showed the results of how those Ollas worked out for me. This year, most of my garden should be watered by Ollas. So with all the water conservation methods out there, why choose Ollas? Why are they so great? For number 1, they do conserve water very well. 2, they help to curb soil-borne diseases. 3, they help to suppress weeds. 4, it's nearly impossible to overwater or underwater. 5, they provide consistent water to the plants. 6, consistent nutrient availability to your plants, preventing deficiencies that cause things like blossom end rot. Also, consistent watering prevents the cracking of fruit and things like tomatoes. 7, they will save you money. And 8, you will have better harvests. So just how much water do Ollas conserve? You should use 70% less water when watering with Ollas. Since you're not surface watering, basically you're not dumping water on the surface of your soil, you're not losing all that water to evaporation. Also, when you need to water deeply, when surface watering, you have to pour a lot of water on the surface before that water will make its way into the deeper soils. Now, because the surface of the soil is dry, this is what helps to suppress weeds, but also to curb diseases and things like funguses, which can splash onto the leaves of your plants when surface watering. Why is it nearly impossible to overwater or underwater with Ollas? To explain that, I've got to explain what an Olla is. So an Olla is a clay vessel. The clay is porous. It is not watertight. So if you fill this clay vessel with water, it will slowly seep out. Now the reverse of this is true if this vessel was just full of air and I submerge it in, say, a tank of water all the way up to the neck. The water, because the clay is porous, would seep into the Olla and actually fill it. So think of when you bury this Olla in your soil, because this is what you do with Ollas, you bury them in your soil, you fill them with water, and if your soil is dry, if the actual amount of water in your soil is less than the water in your Olla, the water will seep out and it will get your soil wet. Now, if you get a torrential rain and your soil becomes really wet, it can also add water to your Olla, and it can go the other direction. It can fill your Olla. When you're watering your plants with this, your plants they will actually wrap their roots around the Olla. And the plant will take exactly the amount of water that it needs. You can get started with Ollas very cheaply, and they really don't take very much of your time, depending on how you want to do it. I made past videos on how to make your own custom Ollas. Now, Ollas are typically spun on a wheel or cast as a single clay vessel, you know, without seams, and they look nice. And if you buy an Olla like that, it's going to be expensive. I've researched, and they range anywhere from $40 to $60. Some of you may be able to get them locally for cheaper than that, but that's just, I haven't been able to find them cheaper than that. If you find them cheaper than that, great, let me know. But I doubt that you'll find them cheaper than just a few dollars, because you can make an Olla just using some terracotta pots. You want to make sure that you use terracotta pots that are not glazed, because you don't want the clay to be watertight. Now, in this case, I have two 6-inch diameter pots. You can very simply, using Gorilla Glue, I prefer Gorilla Glue. I know some people are worried that it could be toxic, but I've researched this, and when Gorilla Glue cures, when it's fully cured, it off-gases and there's no toxins. So you can very easily glue two clay pots together. You cap the bottom pot. Some people will use a ceramic tile. You can use plastic, you can use a coin, whatever you can use to plug that hole, glue it. And then the top, you can either leave it open and you can pour water directly into your Olla and fill it that way. And you bury it so that the top of the Olla is just above the surface. Or if you want to do what I call irrigation Ollas, where you have a consistent flow of water to your Ollas so that they do not run out of water, and it just makes it a whole lot easier when the Ollas are kind of automatically watered or have a water reservoir. Like, I will be using a gravity fed system, so I'll have a water reservoir and irrigation tubing going down into the Olla. And this is going to consistently provide water to it. The fittings that I've used are quite expensive. You're going to pay more than $1.50 per fitting if you use, this is called a riser. This is a 1/2-inch riser for irrigation systems. It has a 1/4 inch fitting right here for 1/4 inch irrigation tubing, and this is where the water will be fed in. The top here, I wanted to use this top part as a release, a bleeder, or burping the system. So when this Olla is completely void of water and you're introducing water into it, if you have the cap off at the top, the air can escape, the Olla will fill with water much easier. When you get your Olla full of water, you screw your 1/2-inch cap on, make sure it's watertight. Use plumber putty or something to make sure you get it tight. I am not going to crank it down real tight. I'm going to rely on the plumber's putty to fill any gaps in the threads, because I want to be able to remove this later if I have to, and then I could use this to, you know, observe what's going on inside the Olla. Now, these 6-inch clay pots were only $1.32 a piece. So this Olla, under $3 if you don't count the fitting, because you can use any type of fitting you want to use. In the past, I've used just simple drip irrigation, what do you call them, those little discs, and you can buy them in bulk. They're much cheaper. You can get them for like 20 cents a piece. You don't need to use expensive fittings, and that's very cheap, less than $3 for an Olla, and it is well worth it, I'm telling you. Alright, so now I get to answer some viewers' questions, and I'm excited to do this because it's not something that I get to do very often. One of the questions I had is, what surface area will Olla water? You know, basically, how large of an area can one Olla cover, and how many plants can an Olla water? And this depends on several things. Let me explain. So with this Olla, these are 6-inch pots. So this is a 6-inch diameter. The radius of this would be 3 inches. If you add the radius, you draw a circle all the way around 3 inches out. That is how large of an area this Olla will water. And your plants will make their way, their roots will make their way into this location, and they will tap into this. Now, depending on the types of plants that you are watering, let's say you have lettuce, leafy greens, something like that. You can actually put several lettuce around the Olla. You know, lettuce don't grow these humongous root systems or anything like that. And as many lettuce as you can put around this Olla, you can water them all. Now, something like tomatoes. Last year, I had 2 large tomato plants tapping into an Olla this size, and they had absolutely no problem. Other factors that can affect how many plants an Olla can water are how are you introducing water into it? Do you have irrigation Ollas, or do you just have a open Olla that you manually pour water into? If you do have a gravity fed system, that's going to add pressure. Think of the weight of the water, the gravity fed, that's going to add a little bit of pressure. This will actually cause your Ollas to seep out more water than they would if there wasn't any pressure. I've also been asked the question, if you are watering 1 Olla per plant, can you use smaller Ollas? The answer is absolutely you can. Especially if you have a consistent flow of water to your Olla, like through irrigation tubing, a gravity-fed system. A small Olla can do a huge amount of watering. You can use an Olla the size of this balloon, especially if you're doing it in something like a pot. I've seen guys use Ollas this size, 1 Olla, 1 pot, watering an entire tree. Okay, so that absolutely can be done. I've also been asked, can I add fertilizers into the water? Worm teas, compost teas, ocean minerals, things like this. Should I add them into the water that I introduce into the Olla? The answer simply is I do not recommend it. The Ollas work because the clay pots are porous. If you go throwing a bunch of things in there that are going to clog up the pores, you're going to end up, you know, needing to replace your Ollas every year. So I plan on hopefully getting 3-4 years out of my Ollas. So I will just simply be using plain water. If your water has something like a lot of calcium in it, things like that, you can get a lot of calcium deposits in your, and this is going to affect how well your Ollas are able to water. And I did a video in the past on making my own Ollas, and this is an Olla that I made. And they turned out very nice. And somebody asked me, have you had a chance to fire the clay, fire your Ollas? And I did attempt to fire most of my Ollas. And it was working out pretty well, but in the end, just one small mistake ended up destroying all of the Ollas. And I just quite simply haven't had the time, because these take about a half hour each to carefully craft these Ollas. And I have a 8-month-old baby now, and I like to spend as much time with them as I can. So I really don't think I will be making any more of these, even though I would really like to, because I do really like them. So I recommend that if you make your own custom Ollas out of clay, that you borrow a kiln or you pay to have somebody fire them for you at a cone 4 temperature. Because any higher than that, and you'll actually make the clay watertight. It won't be porous. So I'll definitely be making future videos on Ollas, especially once I get all of my Ollas made. Also, if you're wondering how much time these Ollas take, it's literally just as much time as it takes you to glue them. I put this one together, no joke, in about 5 minutes. And that is fantastic, especially since they work so well. You know, I had concerns about the terracotta pots. Were they really designed to use as Ollas? Is it going to work? And I'm telling you, these work wonderfully. So they're cheap, fast, and I will bring you guys more videos and show you how I'm going to do the new gravity fed system and more in depth about how all the fittings work and how that's going together. So stay tuned for future videos. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Help me share this video because it's very important. Ollas are a great thing, and the more gardeners and people that we can share this and get this information out to, it's going to be very helpful. So please do share it, and thanks for watching. Have a great growing season.